Start preparing early, right? Because all of these things are things that you can prepare early. So later on in this presentation, I am going to have Miss Rachel Irwin, who's sitting here in the front, come up and do a little bit of a college essay workshop, if you will, right? A little bit of a brainstorming session so you could get that process started. And then when you do come to us for your college application, then you know exactly where to continue. So this year, this year we've had quite the impressive college admissions kind of results. You'll also see them on these blue banners here. But within all of these schools, I mean, I will be very, very honest with you. Not all of these students, or not all students, I would say either got accepted to or went to the school that they originally thought was their dream college. Dream colleges, they change all the time, right? During my previous session, I said that one of my students came up to me, towards the end of 11th grade and said, it's Georgetown or U Chicago or bust, that's all. Those are the two schools. And for her, it happened that way. But then I will also say that I have a student who's currently downstairs in the student panel who said, I 100% want to go to NYU. And NYU later was not his number one option. He said, NYU, no. I want to go to Cornell, and Cornell is now my dream college. So for him, his dream college changed many, many times. So looking at this list, and this list is really just to kind of get a few colleges in your eyes, right? So that you can think, what is my dream college? Does anybody have a dream college here? Just shout it out. Do we have? Yes. Princeton. Anywhere else? Only Princeton? Are we just talking about Princeton today? Princeton. I know some students will say Yale. A lot of students in this area will say Columbia, Cornell, right? We have a lot of those. We also have, non-Ivy League schools that are dream schools too, right? Once again, U Chicago, Georgetown. We also have UK schools that we saw earlier, Oxford, right? McGill. These are all really great schools. Now, when we're talking about our dream college, though, it's so important for us to set that goal. One thing that I said during our previous session was that if you set a goal, you set a dream college, even if that's not your dream college later, right? That's going to give you so much better of a footing to say, okay, now I want to get this score on my SATs. I want to get this GPA. I want to get these extracurriculars, because now you are goal driven. You have a goal to achieve, right? So within that, and I'm going to kind of breeze through this part because so many people know it already. Within all of this, it's so important to keep in mind the 40-month project. What is the 40-month project? It is the 40 months between September of 9th grade all the way up until December of 12th grade. What happens in December of 12th grade? At the end of December, you submit your regular applications and hopefully the last college applications that you are going to submit. So everything within these 40 months ultimately culminates with that pretty package, right? That pretty college applications package. So what goes into this package? This package is made up of 5 major pillars. The first one being your school transcript. Second one, extracurricular activities. Third one, standardized test scores, so SAT, ACT, AP as well. Your passion project or accolades, these kind of go hand in hand. So if you have, let's say, a passion projects can be so many different things. It could be research, it could be a business that you want to create, it could be a nonprofit organization, it could be a book that you want to write. Passion projects are very varied. And so is it that, or am I going to get a very high accolade somewhere? Am I going to work towards some sort of award, some sort of achievement? We'll talk about that soon. And then finally, towards the end of this session, we're going to talk about essays. So essays, your story. How are we writing your story? Now, when we look at these 5 different pillars, the main thing that you want to think about is, what are they saying about you? I always like to think about the why. Why do colleges want to see this? Why do colleges want to look at your school transcript, your extracurriculars, et cetera, right? So if we go one by one, your school transcript talks about your academic rigor throughout your 3.5 years, your 40 months. And it literally quantifies your day-to-day, right? It talks about how your day-to-day went. And so by looking at your GPA, although it's such a small number, right? It's such a tiny, tiny number, it has so much weight because that is really the only number that quantifies so much. Extracurricular activities. Now, extracurricular activities, what colleges want to see is this. Do you take ownership of your own experiences and learning? I think the key word here is ownership. How do you spend your time? What are your authentic and genuine interests? So ownership is so, so important. I have a lot of students who come to me like in the 10th and 11th grade and say, I just did all these different activities because my parents told me to. It's very, very common. Or I have all these different clubs just because my school offered them. And so I just joined everything that I could. Is that ownership? That's not. And is that visible? 100%. A college admissions officer is so much smarter and so much, they see so much through so little and through within such a short amount of time. So we want to make sure that everything on your college application is as genuine as possible. And how do we do that? We do that by starting early and building that up from the first day of 9th grade. Standardized test scores. Now, I know that there's always a question, test optional, all that type of stuff, right? I will say most very selective schools are going back to test required either this year or very soon. And so we definitely do want to make sure that your tests are an option. I have students who take their tests and then at the very end they decide which schools to send their scores to and which schools not to send their scores to. And it's a strategic decision. But it's a strategic decision we can only make because we have those scores with us. So make sure that that is an option that we can opt for, right? So these standardized test scores, they are your reasoning and knowledge application skills quantified. So when we were talking about SAT in the previous session, I said that the SAT it translates things into the SAT way. There's a College Board language that you need to know. And so, are we able to understand that language? Are we able to apply what we know to this new language or different language? That's what we really want to see in our standardized test scores. Are we just going off of what's in school, or are we able to go into that high-pressure environment and perform well? Passion project and accolades. How you take action on your passions. So what makes you angry? What makes you happy? What makes you passionate? What makes you excited? All of these things you can group into a passion project. So what I think makes the best passion project is going to combine your social passions or your more personal passions and then your academic potential. So what a lot of students do is research, right? When they're more medical or, science-oriented. What a lot of business-oriented students do is they make their own business, their own app, their own website. So what is that vision? Do we have the creativity and the initiative to build that vision, to build that blueprint, right? And do we have the resilience and the motivation and everything to drive it all the way through to the end? So that's what a passion project is telling about us. And then finally, your essays. What is your story? What are your lived experiences? And how have they made you the person you are today? There are many, many essays that are super genuine, but not very deep, right? Because, our students by the time we're applying to college is they're 17 years old. Not every 17-year-old has had, some sort of life-changing experience. However, every 17-year-old has made it there somehow, right? And every 17-year-old has a story to tell. No matter how big or small they think that it is, it can be big or small to that 17-year-old. So what is that going to be? And do we think critically about our experiences? Do we reflect on them? That's also a very, very big part of our essays. And so all of these 5 things, what they create is or all these 5 things to be successful. A successful college application is both cohesive and comprehensive. So cohesive, as in everything blends together in one nice, I think I said in the previous sentence, like one sentence. Jaehee, she's the girl who XYZ, right? If we're able to kind of summarize, granted, it wouldn't cover everything, but say, this is what I took from this application, then that application generally will be a really great one because it's more memorable. We're not going to remember the kid who did 15 different activities, none of which kind of melded together, right? But we are going to remember the kid who maybe had 5 really great activities that all synced together. They all created one cohesive picture. Now, how do we create that cohesive picture? That's something I would want to talk with you one-on-one because there are so many different parts that picture can hold. Now, comprehensive. Comprehensive, those 5 things, right? We definitely need those 5 things. But then also, there are definitely things that we always want to make sure are on an application. That creativity factor. What are your communication skills? Do you have leadership skills? Are you able to lead a team? Right? Now, going back to the passion project, do you have that initiative? Do you have that resilience? Do you have that maturity? And in the end, are you going to be a really great candidate for this school? What these schools eventually want, what Harvard wants, what Princeton wants, what Yale wants, whatever school you can imagine. What they want is, and it's in their mission statements, it's not a secret, they want to build a generation of global citizens. They want to put out into the world a set of global citizens who will make a mark on the world, global leaders, right? And they want to make sure that this group, this class of 2029, 2030, I don't know when you guys are going to go into college, but that class is going to do that for them. Because every time, there's a Harvard University graduate on the news, Harvard University's applications skyrocket. Because Harvard is, regardless of what school it is, that's what happens. You say, I want to be like that person. Now I want to go to Harvard. I want to be like that person. So now I want to go to Tufts, right? So those are the things that we want to consider. So within all of these application processes, what is one of the biggest challenges that I face is that students are applying to more and more schools. I gave this example, I think, at an earlier April event. But I graduated high school in 2015. I came into this job in 2019, and it's 2025. And when I look at the students and the number of schools that students are applying to, it's kind of crazy. When I graduated from college, I applied to 12 schools, and I was told that I was a nerd and all these weird things because it was too much. I was being a tryhard. I only applied to 8 schools. How could you apply to 12? That was the conversation. Now, in 2019, I came into this job, and I have students fighting to apply to 15 schools because, their college counselor said they can only apply to 14. I said, wow, 15 is also a lot. This year, the student who applied to the most number of schools applied to 38 schools. And that's just my students. And granted, I will tell you, I told them, no, You can't do that. That's not right, first of all. And there's no way you want to go to 38 different schools, right? It doesn't make sense. But eventually, for her, it did, because she was so nervous. She was so anxious. What if I don't get into any schools? And more than that, what if I just don't get into a school that I like? So this growing anxiety is something that contributes to our growing competition, right? So if you look, and I bring up Columbia because just so many students want to go to Columbia. In 2015, there were a total of 36,250 applicants for that 2015 year. In 2025, we had 59,616 applicants. So we had, I want to say, what is this? 75% jump or something like that. My math is not mathing, but we have this huge jump. But Columbia is not choosing more students. And high schoolers aren't just kind of appearing, right? It's really just because the students who applied to 12 schools are now applying to probably double of that now. So why is that? Once again, that anxiety, the uncertainty. Oh, I might not get into the school that I want to. This lack of confidence. And so this is something that I try to target so much during my meetings, that yes, it is true. What if I don't get into the school that I like? But if we're applying to 38 schools, are we truly making that, are we truly making those chances any bigger? Probably not. So that's something that I really wanted to drive home. If I drive home anything today, that's probably one thing that if I could say anything about these students and how to make this college application process at least a tiny bit easier, it is to instill that confidence at home, right? And this idea of decision making. It is your decision, right? Make that decision for yourself. I say that all the time. You're applying to college, not me. I'll give you the tools. You make the decision. And so empower them, right? And that's also what I will do in my job. And so one of the most important things that I do with students, one of the first things too, is creating a strategic college list. Not one of 38 schools, but I usually say 16 to be ambitious and also comprehensive. And then strategic intended majors. So yes, different majors, different departments do have different acceptance rates for most schools. There are some schools where that doesn't really make a difference. So how are we going to make that difference? That's something, once again, we can talk about together. But main thing is to come with a major. Come with a major that you do want to study. That way, we can keep brainstorming from there. We have a starting point. So with that, do we have any questions? I'd like to take this time to answer any questions that you have about the college application process. It doesn't have to be something that I just covered. It could be about other things that you are curious about. Anything? No questions? Can I move on then? Okay. So then if we don't have any questions, we are going to move straight along to how we do make that difference. So how many current 11th graders do you have in here? Okay. Not as many as I thought. So our 11th graders, right? And I think everyone else can use this as reference, right? For our current 11th graders, today is April 26th, and you have 249 days until December 31st. And that sounds like a lot, but it also sounds like a little when we cut it down into days. What are the things that we are going to do from this point until then to make our college application? Of course, our checklist. Build your college list, engage in extracurriculars, design a passion project, et cetera, et cetera. But now I do want to talk about how that looks different for different grades. So build your college list. Your college list for different grades, when you are in these different grades, it means something different, right? When you're in the 9th grade, your college list is your high school mission. It's your long-term goal. This is in 3 years, 4 years. I want to create this type of profile that is fitting for Columbia, for Princeton. That is your high school mission. So it's really important for us to set that goal. In 10th grade, that's when we're going to be setting more tangible goals. So in order to get to Columbia, their 75th percentile SAT score, which is always the standard that I would use, their 75th percentile SAT score is a 1570. Okay, so that's my goal for the SAT. Their 75th percentile ACT score is a 35. That's my goal for the ACT. What is the GPA that I need? What are the activities that I can engage in that will make me a great candidate for Columbia University? In the 11th grade, now we need to cut down as well as shape that college list into reaches, targets, and safeties. So ambition, curiosity, and practicality. We can't just put in all reaches and then one safety, because that's not a smart college list. What I usually say here is I want to say about 7 reaches to be ambitious. I want to say about, how many days? 5 targets and 4 safeties. And that's usually a pretty ambitious, pretty top-heavy, actually, college list. But, it is one that is manageable usually. And so with that, we also do want to plan our college visits. Our college visits are really, really great fodder for our supplemental essays, our college essays when we are in the 11th grade or going into the 12th grade. There are going to be so many schools that ask you, why do you want to come to Yale University? Why do you want to come to NYU? And so what are we going to write there? We're going to write down what we liked about those schools when we visited. You don't have to visit every single school on your college list, but at least the ones that you think, this might be my dream college. This might be one of these top schools that I really, really like. I say, go visit. Engage in extracurricular activities. So extracurricular activities, once again, this has a different meaning per grade. During the 9th grade, extracurricular activities are exploring your boundaries. Try everything and anything. But when it comes to these extracurriculars, in the 10th grade now we want to pare down, we want to trim down, and then we want to make these deeper. So if we go breadth versus depth, right? 9th grade, we have a lot of breadth, a big spectrum. And then we get deeper during the 10th grade, and then even deeper during the 11th grade. The 11th grade your 11th grade extracurriculars should be a prioritized list that focuses on your personal, your individual interests, and expresses your uniqueness, right? So I give this example a lot, but we had a student who was an amazing violinist, just amazing. She's been going to Juilliard pre-college since she was, I don't know, as big as a violin probably. And she, what she wanted to study, or one of the things that she really wanted to explore in college was music as a language. So she applied to all these schools as a linguistics major. Music as a language and just kind of the therapeutic and also the expressive, the communicative power of music. And so that was great. It was wonderful. She did all this great research on exactly that. She ended up going to Harvard. Now, expresses your uniqueness, though. That itself is very unique. Now, her personal interests were that she loved yoga. Yoga was her way of de-stressing, but also, once again, expressing herself. It was her way of also sharing that with her student body. So she became a certified yogi during the summer, right before her senior year. So for her list was prioritized. It had specifically music and that music research component, and then it had this yoga component that looks completely different, but when we wrote that story, it came together. It came all together into who she is. Design a passion project. We did a lot of passion project brainstorming at our 12 o'clock session, but Passion project, I wouldn't really consider too much, like starting one before the 11th grade. And that's just because before the 11th grade, you're kind of still, your extracurriculars are kind of still maturing. They're still ripening. And that's usually the first part or first step that you take to build a passion project. For example, if we are really passionate about music, usually it is those lessons or those, music activities that feeds into the passion project that we want to do. Maybe it's music business. Maybe it's some sort of composition, whatever it may be. And so before the 11th grade, focus on that, ripening what we have. And then in the 11th grade, we could sit down together for this too, but the culmination, we should create something that is the culmination of your extracurricular activities and your greatest academic passions. I also did mention, if you have a social cause that you're super interested in, super passionate about, and combining that with your greatest academic potentials, interests, abilities, then that would also be a very, very strong passion project and something that shows uniqueness. It shows something different about you. Now, these two are so connected, right? We have high academic standing and then standardized tests. I don't know how many times I could say this, but your GPA is not reversible. What you get, that B+, hopefully no C's, on an assignment, on a test. Of course, some teachers are nice enough to give you a retake or whatever it may be, but once it's there, right? Once it's there, and once it's there on your record, then you cannot go back and change that. And so make sure that we're making every day count and make sure that we are not making any irreversible changes or irreversible mistakes. So often I will tell students, create that buffer in the 9th grade or as early as possible. Create that buffer of good grades so that when things do get difficult, when challenges come, they always do, right? Then we have a good buffer, a good cushion to absorb that shock. Kind of a similar wavelength for standardized tests. Get those done early, as soon as possible. If you get those done before 11th grade, then you're in a really great place because the summer after 11th grade is usually when you're going to be doing the most important or the most significant extracurricular activities, whether that's an internship or some sort of research or some sort of special program or just working. I think working is such a great experience. All of these things are only possible once you get your testing done because then you have the time to do that. You have the time to commit, invest into all of that. So get your testing done ASAP, like today, right? As soon as possible. This is also, I would say, my most uncomfortable but then also such a true statement. Without a competitive GPA, without competitive numerics, statistics, none of this will matter. Because your numbers, they're looking at tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of applications, right? They're not going to look at every single application until they've done at least one pass of filtering. They're going to filter based on the easiest thing to filter by, but also the most significant thing to filter by, your GPA and your standardized test scores. So get that done and get that. You need to have all of that done, and you have to have all of that really strong in order for your extracurriculars to shine, in order for your essays to matter, to be honest. So make sure that your GPA is strong. And if you have a concern, I always say this, I think the most important skill and most important characteristic that a student needs to have is the ability to ask for help. Identify that you need help. I need tutoring. Okay. I need my teacher to help me. Okay. Friends and YouTube are not always going to help. Khan Academy is not always going to help. So an actual teacher is what most students will need. So I really wanted to give that a lot of weight. So with that in mind, with a strong GPA, with a strong SAT, ACT score, now we're going to go into our next most important or most time-consuming also thing, which is the college essay. And I want to invite Miss Rachel Irwin up to the stage. All right. So you could just...
All right. Okay. Welcome, everyone. As she said, my name is Rachel Irwin. I'm the Dean of Faculty here at MEK, but I'm also a college essay coach and have been for a number of years now. And it's one of the parts of my job that I enjoy the most, really getting to connect with students on that deeper level as we write these college essays. I also think that writing the college essay for a lot of students is one of the most intimidating parts of their application process. It is a type of writing that you are not often asked to do in the academic world, to write about yourself and to have something to say. And out of the different essays that you're gonna have to write, the supplemental essays for Princeton, for Yale, for U Chicago, the most intimidating is the one that goes to almost every school, which is your personal statement. Because, yeah, there's some prompts they give to kind of guide you, but for the most part, with your personal statement, you have free reign. You can write about anything you want. And that free reign for students is terrifying, because what am I gonna say? If I can say anything in the world about myself, what am I gonna say? So that's really what I wanna focus on today, to just give you like a little mini workshop here, right in the here and now. I know not everybody here is 11th grade, but even if you're 9th or 10th grade, or you're the parent of a 9th, 10th, or 11th grade, this is something that's so helpful for you to start thinking about right now. And that is, how do I make a personal statement good? And I'm gonna boil this down to 2 words. Keep it simple: depth and substance. Now, on the surface, those things might sound very related, like they might sound almost like the same thing, but they're not, so we're gonna talk about each one individually, and we're gonna start with substance. You have to have something to write about. You have to have something to say. This is your story. And we do want to write stories. A lot of times, think about that phrase, personal statement. Even the name of it sounds like you should, be writing like, oh, this is my name, this is what I'm passionate about, this is what I do, this is what I'm good at, this is what I hope to do in the future. But no, that's not what it is. That's very not memorable. They can get all that information from your resume, right? Or, you could say, oh, I'm a hard worker, I'm resilient. But who's gonna believe you? Everybody's gonna say that when they're trying to get into college. So when we are writing these essays, it's a story you have to tell. You have to tell a story about yourself. Probably everybody in here, parents as well, have probably had an English teacher tell you at some point, show, don't tell. But that's because it's like a universal truth of writing. If you tell me something, I'm like, okay. But if you show me something that makes me feel something that gives me goosebumps, something that makes me remember you, that's such a more powerful statement. So your substance is, what do you have to say? Now, this typically falls into 2 categories. For some of you, not very many of you, it's a smaller percentage of you, your substance is gonna be something that happened to you. I've had students write, and this is usually the harder topics. I've had students write about homelessness. I've had students write about a parent falling ill. I've had students write about a father leaving. These kind of harder things, facing adversity, challenges in schools, bullying. These kind of harder things that you don't really have any control over, they happen to you. But they write about what they did next, how they reacted to that adversity, how it changed them, how it shaped them. And those can be really powerful essays. But I, honest to goodness, hope that a lot of us sitting right here at 16, 17 years old don't have a lot of tragedy to write about, don't have a lot of experiences that happened to you, right? Or maybe you do and you just don't want to write about that. That's not the kind of essay you want to write. No, so for the vast majority of you, the substance is going to be the experiences you pursued, the ones that you made happen, the extracurriculars you did, the volunteering you did, your passion project, the traveling you did, the experiences you had with your friends, with your family, your community. So this is why what Ms. Jahi was talking about is so important, right? Go and have experiences. Make sure you have something to write about. Make sure you are doing things, and make sure when you do them, you're going at it full-hearted. You put everything into it, and then you're going to have something to say. Now, the second part of this is depth. So if substance is what you have to say, depth is what do you have to say about it. You could have the most awesome experience in the world, but if you don't have anything to say about it, it's not going to be that great of an essay, okay? So I'm going to, practice what I preach. I'm going to show, not tell, and I'm going to give you an example of what I'm talking about. Meet Hannah. So Hannah's a former student of mine, and Hannah had a lot of substance in her resume. She had good grades, great test scores. She had a lot of extracurriculars, a lot of ambition, okay? But when we sat down to talk about what we would write about for her personal statement, we can write about anything in the world, okay? We could have written about some of her impressive internships, right? This organization she helped with recyclable bags, okay? But the more talking we did and the more brainstorming we did, she decided to write about longboard dancing, which if you are anything like me, I had never heard of until she brought it up. I was like, what is that? Okay, so apparently it's like a skateboard, but it's longer, and dancing is really doing tricks, okay? Now, this wasn't even an activity that she'd been doing since she was 8 years old or something. She picked this up pretty late. This was something that she kind of just got interested in. I think she was a junior when she got interested in it. And even after she got interested in it, it wasn't like she was competing. She wasn't winning medals. This was just a hobby that she liked and that she went after and that she was passionate about. It's just something she enjoyed. So as far as substance goes, right, it's a little on the lighter side. It's not the most epic experience. It's not the most impressive thing. But her essay was one of my favorite essays. And by the way, it got her into 3 Ivy League schools, which is very hard to do. Doesn't matter if you have good grades. Doesn't matter if you have extracurriculars. Getting into 3 Ivy League schools is hard to do. And she wrote about longboard dancing. But because she had something to say about it, the substance was It was okay, kind of cool, kind of interesting, kind of unique, but not necessarily super impressive. But the depth was so much that it made her essay memorable. So we're gonna actually look, I can't show you the whole thing, we don't have time for that, but I'm gonna show you a couple of highlights. We're gonna start by reading the intro. This is how she started her essay. A 44 by 9-inch piece of wood is my dance floor of choice. My relationship with longboard dancing began with the accidental click of a YouTube video. A girl stepped and spun atop an oversized skateboard, bouncing and turning as if the board had muscles of its own. As one video rolled into another, and then another, and then another, the footage of this alien activity held me by the collar for hours. In miniskirts and Chuck Taylors, never missing a step or a beat, these girls offered a manicured middle finger to the grungy, Dickies-wearing boy archetype. So great imagery, great writing, but you can see right away she has a passion for this. Also, let's go back to that substance thing. It wasn't like she had some cool aunt that got her into this. It wasn't like she met some celebrity. She watched a YouTube video. Think of how many YouTube or TikTok videos have you watched? She watched a YouTube video, she got interested in it, and she did it. Again, substance-wise, that seems very ordinary, very mundane. But the way she has something to say about it, the way she describes what it meant to see those girls with confidence, with fierce, and it meant something to her. So she tells her story, right? Her story is even more granular. Her story was about, she started this activity, right? None of her friends did it. She didn't even have a place to practice. Couldn't even buy a longboard in New Jersey. She had to go to Greenwich Village to buy it. And our entire essay is really about her trying to get this one trick down. She keeps trying, she keeps trying, she keeps trying. She is trying to get this one trick down. She's got busted elbows, busted knees. And, even her friends are looking at her going, why do you keep doing this? What is the point? Now, of course, she eventually, by the end of the essay, she does get the trick. Of course, that shows resilience, right? That shows grit. But she goes deeper with this, and I want us to read the end of her essay to really show this is what she had to say about her longboarding. She says, I've realized that I can truly drive myself to work hard, even when there are no cool points, academic merits, or financial gains to be won. My longboard exploits have shown me that not everything we do appears to present a reward. In fact, life would be quite limited if we only did what we directly benefited from. Instead, I choose to emulate those spunky longboard goddesses that I first watched on YouTube, staring defiantly back at me from my computer screen, ready to take on new adventures and new challenges. She had something to say about this. She had thought about it. She had thought about, why does this weird activity mean so much to me? And that makes for a really powerful, memorable essay. Y'all didn't even read the whole thing, but I bet some of y'all are going to remember this when you leave today. Okay? Maybe some of you will look up longboarding. What is that? I want to YouTube that, figure that out. And also think about what that admissions officer knows about her. They already know she's a good student. They have her transcripts. They already see her resume and her interests. We have supplementary essays where we go into more depth about her internships. But from this, they see the kind of person she is. Someone adventurous, someone willing to take on challenges, someone resilient, someone willing to do something outside the norm, someone willing to follow their passions and just see where it leads them. That is an example of a great essay. Now, I'm going to show you one more example. This is kind of the flip side, and that's Olivia. Now, this is actually a student that Jahi had mentioned earlier, the student that was very into music, played violin forever. She loved music. She didn't go to school for music, but she loved music. And she kind of the opposite of Hannah. She came in right away knowing what she really wanted to write about. See, she was so into music and was so, kind of a compassionate person that she started a music program in a Spanish Harlem middle school. She started it, she got the funding for it, she helped to conduct the students, teach the students the music. She threw a concert where they played songs, right? She helped fund the instruments that they played. That's a lot of substance. That looks good. Come on, all of us are like, ooh, man, wish I started a music program for, disadvantaged kids. That sounds really good. That is a high substance topic, right? But I'm telling you, if she didn't have anything to say about it, if she didn't have any depth, it's not going to be as impactful of an essay, right? Even if you're talking about something really cool, really compassionate, really leader, really innovative that you did, you got to have something to say about it. So I want us to read her first 4 paragraphs, okay? This is the first 4 paragraphs of her essay, and I want you to notice something funny about it. So she says, I bow my head to the earth, surrendering myself to the moment. Outside, the city's ritual blaring of horns and sirens washes over me like waves in the sea. I am floating in being, just me, my breath, and my mat. Folding into a crouching position, I push off my feet, attempting to balance on my hands. But as soon as I lift off, I end up flopping back down. I've been working on a crane pose for months. But each time that I tip forward, searching for balance in empty space, my mind cracks. The uncertainty of the moment consumes me, invading my bubble of being and preventing me from reveling in the attempt, the moment where I push off into the unknown. Only by embracing the sensation of seeking balance amidst imbalance would I find my way, a Taoist concept of finding one's path among the chaos and disorder of life. Daring myself to overcome my apprehension of the unknown, I entered the summer after sophomore year, ready to take a bold leap. We didn't mention music or Harlem or students once. This is the beginning of her essay. We haven't even got to it yet. The rest of her essay talks about starting this program, getting to know these kids, falling in love with teaching them, wanting to expand the program because all their friends come up and tell her like, oh, I wish I could be in your music program. So she goes for a grant. She tries to get this grant so she can expand the program, and she fails. She doesn't get that grant. She's feeling disappointed, disillusioned, like she failed her students. The final part of the essay is her conducting a concert with her students, and they're playing Beethoven's Ode to Joy. And she just has this moment where she realizes, like, I have found my way. She brings it back to this Taoist concept that she brings up. As Jahi brought up, Olivia was very into yoga, got very into yoga, and she wanted to incorporate at least a part of that into her essay. And that's the hook we were able to use to bring that depth to the story. It wasn't just, I'm doing this because it looks good on my college applications. Right? We were able to, what motivates her? What made her want to do these things? And what did she personally learn from it? More than just, hey, look at me, I helped some kids. How did she grow and develop? And we get that from this, right? Trying to find some comfort in discomfort, trying to find some way to be able to be okay with taking bold leaps, being okay with failure, right? So you gotta have something to say, but then you also have to have something to say about it. So that might sound like an intimidating task. So we're actually gonna do a quick exercise right now to help you with this, okay? We're gonna look at some brainstorming questions. If you are currently a student, I recommend in your phone, if you have a piece of paper, or just even in your head, try to think of some answers to these questions. If you're a parent, maybe write these questions down so you can ask your student later, right, if they're not here. And if you do a session with a college essay coach at MEK, we ask you many of these types of questions. This is just like a little preview. We ask you questions after questions after questions so we can help you to figure out who you are and what you want to say. So the first one here is, what is one thing that is an integral part of your life? Now, I know it says one thing, but I would put one thing and then I would keep going, right? Because, okay, so a lot of us, first thing we might think of is something real important to us, like family, friends, maybe an extracurricular hobby that you're very into. Some of us, you might not want to admit it, but the first thing that popped in your head was like, my phone. My phone is so integral, I need my phone. Write it all down. You don't know where it's going. Don't self-censor. That's what I always tell my students. Don't censor yourself and already start discounting ideas. I can't talk about loving my phone, right? Well, we just saw essays about yoga and longboard dancing. You don't know what you can talk about. Don't self-censor when you're brainstorming. Just whatever comes to your mind, put it down. What is integral to your life? You feel like you can't live without it. You got to have it. Is it a good thing or bad thing that it's integral? Start thinking about that. Do you have a memory that you recall often? Maybe it's something bad. Maybe it's a memory you recall it a lot because it was traumatizing or it really negatively impacted you. Maybe it was good, something joyful that you like to think about and smile. Maybe it was neutral. It wasn't like particularly bad or good, but it just always pops up in your head. You're always thinking about it. What are those memories? Why do you think that that memory comes to your brain so much? Why is it important to you? Why are you holding on to it? Again, don't worry right now if this will turn into an essay or not. You're just brainstorming. You're just thinking. You're trying to get to know yourself a little bit better. As a child, what did you want to be when you grow up? And how did that change? Now, I consider 16 and 17-year-old children, but think about when you were 5 or 6 and someone asked you, what do you want to be when you grow up, right? Or maybe when you were middle school, right before you entered high school, what do you want to be? Maybe it was something like a lawyer, a doctor. Maybe it was, I want to be a princess. I want to be a fairy. I want to be a dragon slayer, right? What did you want to be? What did you tell people? Why did you tell them that? Where did that come from? Did other people tell it to you? Was it something you saw? And then how has that changed now? What do you think you want to be? Are you more certain of what you want to be? Are you less certain? You're like, well, I was so certain I wanted to be a fireman when I was growing up. Now I don't know what I want to do. Why do you think that change happened? What do you know about yourself that you didn't know before? What would you still like to know about yourself? Really think about this. What did you want to be when you grew up? How is that different now?
No.
Do you have an object that you think represents you? So there's a couple ways you could go about this one, okay? One is think about like your bedroom. Think about your house. Is there like a personal object there that you feel like represents you? I'll give you a personal example, okay? In my home, I have a snow globe with a cactus in it. So like when you do the snow globe thing, you turn it upside down, the snow comes after the cactus. I always feel like that's a metaphor for me because I'm from Texas, and now I live up here where it snows and it's cold all the time. So the little metaphor of a cactus in the snowstorm. But it doesn't have to be something you personally own, right? It can be an object in general, something you relate to. You're like, I feel like a water fountain. Why? That's random, but why? Right? I feel like an elevator. Think about it. Get creative with it. Get outside your head. What is an object that you feel like kind of symbolizes you, represents you? And then more importantly, why? Why does that come to your head? Why is that something that feels relatable to you? Do you have something that you've been afraid to tell your parents about? This is the question that sometimes parents don't like. But it's a powerful question. Because we're talking about being deep. That's a lot of times where the deep stuff is. The stuff you're afraid to say out loud, afraid to tell your parents, afraid to tell your friends. This can speak to tension or truths about yourself or your identity that you're wrestling with, even as a young teenager. Think about it. What are you afraid of and why? And if you truly aren't afraid of anything to tell your parents, think about why that is, right? What kind of household did you grow up in where maybe you don't feel afraid to say anything? Now, again, there's a bunch of different questions I can ask you, but for all of these questions, no matter what the answer was, the most important thing is the next question you ask yourself, which is why. And keep asking it. You know, you ask yourself, what you you ever meet a 4-year-old and they're like, why? And you're like, well, because blah, blah, blah. Why? Blah, 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 blah. Why? Be the 4-year-old, right? Keep asking yourself, why? Okay? Don't be afraid to dig deep into why you want to do the thing, why you feel the way you feel, why you think the way you think. Okay? And this is going to help you to find the significance, right? Look at what you've written down, right? Do this exercise, write it down, think about what you thought about. Well, is there any common threads? Even if there isn't, it's okay. It doesn't need to be a common thread yet. But what does this really say about you? Are you getting a better idea of who you are, what matters to you, what kind of makes you tick, how you think about yourself, right? Find that significance. So let's sum it all up, right? For your personal statement, right? As you brainstorm, try to explore in realms of memory you've never thought about before. Right? Think outside the box. Think about things that matter to you. Think about experiences you've had. I've had so many sessions with students where I'm like, did anything remarkable ever, not remarkable, but notable, anything memorable ever happen in your childhood? And they're like, no. I'm like, no way. There is no way. You don't have to have won the lottery or something in your childhood. Everybody has had things that they remember, the things that stick with them. Okay, so explore those memories, reflect on them, think about them. Always dig deeper, asking yourself why, find the significance. And once you do start to narrow down on a topic, once you do start to think you might have an idea of what you want to say in your essay, what you might want to talk about in your essay, ask yourself, why do you want to tell that to an admissions officer? Out of all the stories you could tell, why is this the one? Okay, that's what you got to be able to answer. Now, if you're sitting here going, okay, I feel like I need a little help, I'm feeling a little intimidated, okay, here's some other advice for what you can do to make sure you're ready. And especially if you are you can still, if you're going into 12th grade, you still have time, but especially your 9th and 10th grade, this is good long-term advice, okay? Read. Now, what do you read? Well, reading Jane Austen is amazing and will help you with your SATs and your APs, but is not going to help you necessarily with this, all right? You need to read memoirs. You need to read magazine articles from the New Yorker where people write personal essays. It doesn't always have to be college admissions essays, though you can find those. There's whole books and troves of those online. But just read texts where people are writing personal essays, where they're talking about themselves. Learn how they do it, okay? Make a habit of self-reflection. This is the hardest thing for me as an essay coach sometimes when I have a student who I'm like, well, why do you like that? I don't know. Oh, can you think about it for a little bit? I just like it. And it's like you can tell they've never really made it a practice to self-reflect and think about why do they do what they do? Why do they like what they like? So make this a habit now. Make a habit of of self-reflecting on your experiences, what they mean to you, how they impacted you, why you make certain decisions or choices. Keep a journal if it's helpful to you, okay? You'll be surprised what you might later come up and use on your college essay from that journal. And then try to expand your experiences as much as possible. Okay, this goes back to what Jahi was talking about, right? Follow your passions, and when you do follow them, go all in. Remember Olivia, she liked yoga? What does that really have to do with your college apps? But she went all in. She became a yoga teacher, got certified to be a yoga teacher, right? Remember Hannah? Longboard dancing, didn't even compete in it, but she went all in on it. So whatever your experiences are, fully experience them. Try a lot of different things and put your full heart and soul into it. And I promise you, you'll later have something to say about it. All right, I'm going to turn it over now to Miss Jahi for next steps.
All right, thank you, Miss Rachel. Can we get a round of applause for her? All right. Thank you. I think most students come to me at the end of 11th grade or around this time in 11th grade. And the first thing I ask them is what are you most concerned about? And they say, my essay, Like, okay. But there's always a little bit more. There's always something more that we can do in addition to the essay. And so I do want to turn your attention just because I want to tell you how I can help you. Your folder inside your tote bags that you all received, there's a 40-month project with MEK review program kind of brochure. And so if you kind of open that up, the first page is a little bit more just like a intro. And then after that, we do have kind of like what we've laid out is basically in 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, what are the different things, what are the different agendas, let's say, of, checkpoints, right? What checkpoints do we have? And at what months should we be having these checkpoints? Now, if you work with MEK, of course, these checkpoints come in the form of meetings, formally scheduled 1-hour-long meetings. And during these months, so let's just say 9th grade first, we have, right before 9th grade starts, your 9th grade strategy. So what are we going to get out of this year? In October, we have your academic check-in. Are we doing okay? Is there anything? Once again, do we need help? Anything like that. December, summer plan. February, academic check-in, and 10th grade course selection. So these are all noted for the months that these agendas need to happen, right? And so you'll see 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. It comes out to a total of 40 meetings over the course of these 3.5 years. So I do want to make sure that everybody goes through that. If we are a current 11th grader, we would be looking at 12th grade. So in 12th grade, we do have kind of the heftiest leg of our college application of this 40-month project. It is 16 to 18 college application or college counseling meetings. These are all 1 hour each. And then there is an additional portion, like an additional essay portion of this, because that is not done by college counselors like me, but essay coaches like Miss Rachel, who really sit down one-on-one for that time that we have scheduled together, going through each essay from the beginning, brainstorming, all the way to the end, which is polishing. And then those essays come to me and we submit them together, right? So it is very much a tag team or like a team effort there. So you can find all of the information here in this booklet. And then of course, what you can do in terms of actionable steps, because I'm not gonna ask you to put thousands of dollars down today, right? Actionable steps. Set up a free consultation with me so that we can talk about it, right? I want to be able to talk with you, to set that plan with you so that we make sure those 40 meetings or 28 meetings or 18 meetings are getting put to good use, that we're planning ahead for them, that we're making sure that each of those meetings creates a better college application. So please do schedule a consultation. There are also in your folders these kind of like half slips. I might have told you during the previous session if you're here, but these half slips, they're all consultation request forms. You can fill them out and give them to one of the people at the desks, any of the desks, and they will schedule one based on your availability. I ask that you just put a couple different options because time fills up a lot. And so if you could do that, then we can talk about it. We can talk about what's the best next step for us, what type of meetings that we may have and what we need, right? And also you can voice your concerns. I'm concerned about my extracurriculars. I'm concerned that I don't have this, I don't have that, I have too much this, I have too much that. Tell me, because every college application looks different, as it should, as it must. Right. So I want to make sure that we're creating that college application that suits you and tells your story and does you justice, because that's my job. So yes, if you do schedule that 30-minute initial interview meeting, then this 5% off, it's a pretty hefty amount, but 5% off does apply. We do also have 10% off summer group classes. This is continuing from the beginning of this month. So we're entering into the last week of this promotion. And then also 10% additional off if you do 2 or more group classes. So this is if you're doing SAT prep, ACT prep, high school honors, AP, any of these courses, you can group all of them together for an additional 10% off, an additional 5% off for one time if you pay in full. So if you're not 100% sure, place a deposit on either summer or fall or sorry, not fall, in the summer, and we can talk more, right? If you're not too sure, this event is ending really soon. I can't make a decision right now. Set up the consultation. I think that's the easiest action that we can do, and then we can talk about the next one afterwards. Yeah, I don't want to force anyone to, or I don't want to put too much pressure on anybody at this point, because I do know this is probably going to be one of the biggest decisions that we have to make in a student's high school career. Now, as you all also received, we have a $200 voucher. This is for any invoiceable MEK items. So it could be a 1-hour consultation. It could be towards this Roadmap to College program. It could be towards SAT, whatever it is, until the end of August. So please do also make use of this, take advantage of this. And I believe that is all. If we don't have any other questions, then I will close it out for today. Thank you all for coming. It's been a really, really great time. And I hope to talk with all of you one-on-one very, very soon. Thank you.